Good morning again. Welcome in the last panel of our Forum of Ideas. For this last moment, join us and myself, two women curators whose careers are linked to the ecologies and memories of different territories around the globe. The work of Amanda Mas Caminals, director of Instituto Mutante de Narrativas Ambientales in Matadero, Madrid, and Marina Otero, Visa, director of research at New Institute, both will help us to situate the practice of the first edition of artifacts in the European panorama. In the next few minutes, I will present our biennial artifacts, and then Amanda and Marina will present their work, each one of us in 10 minutes presentation. And this will be followed by the best part to share ideas. That is what we are here to do in this forum. So then we'll start the conversation. But just to quick present this amazing panel, Amanda Masha Caminals is director of the Instituto Mutante para Narrativas Ambientales at Matadero, Madrid, and founder and co-director of the organization Translocalia, a network of artists, curators, and designers to plan for the future through art. As an independent curator, she recently curated the 2019 edition of Mobile Week Barcelona and directed the city station at the Center of Contemporary Culture of Barcelona, CCB. She has worked in institutions including the Institute of International Visual Arts in London and Casa Triângulo in São Paulo. And she has curated shows such as Stephen Dean, Jugglers, Interstitial Zones, Underloop, and she holds also a BA in Humanities from Pompeu Fabra University in Barcelona and degree in History of Art from University of Barcelona, and also a Master Honours in Curating Contemporary Art from Royal College of Art in London. Next, we'll have also here Marina Otero Barcier. She holds a PhD architecture. She is a PhD architecture in Director of Research at New Institute, so Dutch National Museum of Architecture, Design and Digital Culture, which includes the National Architecture Archive in Rotterdam, and Director of Social Design Masters at Design Academy of Eindhoven. Her curatorial work includes projects such as Dutch Pavilion at the Venice Architecture Biennale in 2018 and the Oslo Architecture Triennial in 2016, and the Shanghai Biennial in 2021. Previously, Marina worked as director of programming at Studio X, a global network research centers on the future of cities based in Amman, Beijing, Istanbul, Johannesburg, Mumbai, New York, Rio de Janeiro, Tokyo, attached to Columbia University. Marina has co-edited Unnamed Architecture and Security Studies series, After Belonging, Work, Body and Leisure, Architecture and of Appropriation, and More Than Human. She has taught at ETSA, Madrid, Royal College of Art, London, in Columbia University, New York, Barnard College, New York, Geneva University of Art and Design, among others. Myself, I am an architect, a curator, and a university professor in the fields of architecture and the city. I also hold a PhD in architecture from the Faculty of Architecture in Lisbon. And since then, I teach in some universities as Beira Interior, University of Minho, School of Architecture, and Architectural Association in London. I'm founder of Architecture Gallery, a really tiny space here in Porto, an independent space dedicated to reflection and debate on architecture, city, and territory. And I found Architectural Affairs is a studio that works in the disciplines of architecture in 3 dimensions: building, curatorship, and edition. I was curator for smaller cities, Shaping Shape, Rhythm of Distance, Propositions for the Repetition, Endless Space, Biennial of Contemporary Art of Maya, Contemporâneos Temporâneos, and this year, Anuário. So I'm here as a part of the bid team of Guarda 2027 for the European Capital of Culture, and also as a programmer of architecture and territory cluster. So I will just quick present our project, Artifacts, and I'll also contextualize it in the main aim of Guarda 27. So with the climate and the global health change that we are living nowadays, rural areas have become attractive for those seeking a lifestyle in greater contact with nature, ecology, and sustainability. More than half of world's population now lives in urban areas, as we know. In 2050, this number will grow to 6.5 billion people, so 2/3 of humanity. The bid of Guarda 2027 aims to perpetuate the link with the local territory, its roots, its culture, heritage, but also with the planet and its wider issues, believing in the impact of small actions of each city and village in the big picture. In the city of Guarda and in this network with the other 18 municipalities that join the bid, we intend to boost the development of the interior region of Portugal from its cultural dimension. With this goal, the bid of Guarda 27 is assumed by a strategy developed in a long term, supported by the idea that culture is a tool for a fair and social inclusion, for the democratic development of the public space, and for healthy, sustainable, and ecological environment. Within Guarda's bid to become the European Capital of Culture in 2027, and in this architecture and territory program, Imaginary was born this project of creation of collaborations between Portuguese and foreign artists and architects, and also designers and artists of the region, entitled Artifacts. We aim to integrate and anticipate the program of architecture and territory of this candidacy that intends to be and represent all, and in which is materialized in a biennial of knowledge, deeply embedded in the territory and intended to implement a constellation of practices with long-term impacts. We all can visit these 6 exhibitions until 4th of September that are in distinct points of the region. So Alcongosta, Janeiro de Cima, Telhado, Famalicão da Serra, Gonçalo and Fundão. These collective exhibitions, we can consider them as a mirror of several dialogues and several scenarios that hosted them, that hosted also the residencies. The invitation to this visit suggests, therefore, paying attention to the places that hold the memories and the experience of the immersion and the permanence on the space. Artifacts First Edition introduced the theme Supernatural Togetherness to propose an alliance between humans, generations, species, and knowledge in order to save the future. Ongoing until September, the program has involved an international call for projects that result during May in artistic residencies and in local artisans' workshops. During yesterday and today, we watch several of the results of the residencies, but also I will have the chance and the possibility to make a quick and brief presentation of all of them, the 6 of them. With the onset of globalization, rural areas have become peripheral, so to the cities, so like marginalized. And we now see that with a rapidly aging of population, that passing down of ancestral knowledge, that means that this knowledge isn't threatened. The dominant imaginary that arose from air pollution, climate change, or the COVID-19 pandemic imagines and conceives a world in which nature must be protected from human action. However, the human conditions cannot be separate from nature because it is an intrinsic part of the same socio-ecological metabolism. So we need imaginaries that instigate all generations to think about a more livable planet right now. The project Artifacts aims to care for an intangible memory of a territory, and it's not just a project. To do so, we propose to rethink dialogues for the construction of a contemporary heritage of artistic works focusing on the relation with the region and the reinterpretation of traditional knowledge. And the main question is, can art and architecture save an endangered legacy and an uncertain future and rewrite them for a post-human point of view? So, as a result of this open call and the residencies, we have now 6 exhibitions, and I will present, as I said before, in a really quick way. So the baskets, as we saw today, from Studio La Paz Nanga, with Oficina from Sr. Joaquim and Irene Venâncio. They work the chestnut wood basketry in Famalicão da Serra, and we could say that the project is driven by a connection of practice that represents a complex relationship between the nature and the human made respecting the nature plant cycle within the forest. So since ancient times, Mediterranean forests have been a habit for human activity, the growth of destruction and attempt of restoration, of ritual and tradition, of growth and decay. So also of history and the future. And this project is a result of non-verbal collaborative design process with the chestnut basket makers of Sr. Joaquim and Dona Irene from Famalicão da Serra. We could say that the object appears in a simple way, yet it illustrates knowledge of lifelong experience that still requires the human hand. Nowadays, basket makers are true conservationists, we can say, and they practice the most humble and cycling craft used over the millennia to make function objects for all daily aspects. At Gonçalo, we have Fernanda Fragateiro working with Oficina from Sr. Alberto Carvalhinho with a project called Unity is Strength. They work wickerwork basketry, and we could present the work as starting from the relationship between sculpture, architecture, and text. Fernanda used wicker and handmade basketry techniques to build sculptures that appear to be drawing woven in space. In working with artisans, Sr. Alberto, they together change what was related with the scale in a way to enhance the characteristics of wicker as a natural, flexible, and delicate, and also strong material with great potential for use in sculpture and architecture. But through this residency, long and narrow sculptures were created in a whole woven wickerwork, as well as several mats woven in cracked wicker, which explore the idea of an unfinished and endless space. The pieces are suspended from the ceiling across the rooms or are integrated into the house overtures in a permanent tension with the architectural space, pre-existent space, almost ruined space. In this beauty manor house made of granite and long unoccupied, they found a symbolic place to show this work and reflect on the urgency of caring for and recovering what is precious and really in danger of disappearing. Then we have Nuno Vicente working poetry with Casa de Barro and and the artisan Katia Pires, and the project is called Yet Grafts for the End of the Concept of Nature. This project is visible in Telhado region, and according to the scientific journal of Plotos 1, where Nuno focused the beginning of his narrative, 76% of European insect species have disappeared in the last 30 years, including pollinating agents such as bees and butterflies. The consequences are serious, and it is really urgent to think about solutions to minimize the massive loss. It is essential for Nuno to develop new ways of being among humans, non-humans, and non-living beings. It is urgent to learn new ways of approaching the territory, an approach that favor mutualism, attention to microscales, and that enable the balance of ecosystem. The project is based on the system conception of the environment and explore space, interpreted as a secondary space that Gilles Clement calls the third landscape. Territories that escape human control and that globally represent the last strolls for species that do not adapt to the human life. Using technical precepts, the project intends to provide discrete assistance to a life that is in a free expansion, an art form that could be called transpublic because it extends beyond the exclusively human cultural attention. Then we have from Collective Warehouse, working with Fab Lab Aldeias do Xisto, the piece called The Octagon. It's a result of a residence with digital fabrication in Fundão. And they were dealing in between the practice also, but they were dealing with between refrigerators and abandoned cars. They decide to rescue a forgotten object, which was readily recognized by the Fundanenses, the people from Fundão, as the old carousel of school of Alcaide. A specific also part of this region. This carousel is or was garbage. It was an obsolete object. Simultaneously, they testimony collective memory and handcraft artifact, and also an analog pivot. So they work together with all these issues and fulfill functions and even failed functions due to the inadequacy of the parameters there that are currently required for its category of this category of objects. So they try to reflect on how to guarantee the carousel survival, and they did it by establish a dialogue between the ancient and the new, and between also the analog and the digital. So the project requires interaction and human action to activate the mechanism, and it is also accompanied by a QR code with a digital file that can be cut in any Fab Lab in all around the world, and assembly by everyone who wishes to give back the carousel its original function. Then we just watch their presentation. A collective that we call Soma, and they call themselves Soma, but is made by this group of students of architecture, Diogo Rodrigues, Fernando Pimenta, and João Oliveira, that were working with Oficina António and Lourdes Nunes dos Santos. Their project is called Built in Basket, and is a residency that results of chestnut wood basketry in Alcongosta. In homage to the people of Alcongosta and to their labor and craft talent, The raw material of basketry is present in this piece, so the chestnut wood, and they applied it in an installation and in several prototypes. This installation shows the chestnut wood sometimes as braised stick and other times transformed into baskets that, according to their chromatic composition and formal arrangement, explore the design of light in an exercise of object reinterpretation and re-signification. At the same time, in prototyping, traditional techniques and knowledge are crossed with digital fabrication and industrial methods for the production of everyday objects. So they were really paying attention on the mutation and adaptation of basket weaving techniques to new objects that they associate with, also with the need to value this art and also the test on bringing crafts closer to contemporaneity. Last but not least, To Weave a Script is the name of the project that furthered the residency of Andreia Garcia and Vanessa Foster at Casa das Tecedeiras with Sónia Latado and Rosa Pereira. They were working in linen weaving in Janeiro de Cima, and they say that the Weave a Script emerged from a crossroad between art and data science. In fact, its starting point was the desire to find a way. See? I'm here. Can you hear me? Okay. As I was saying, their starting point was a desire to find a way to codify and embed a computational process in the material construction of an object. So that mathematical algorithm would, and actually did, dictate the tangible structure that gives shape to the object, to the final object. For this, they have converted machine learning algorithms with that modeled to predict the price of the price of cotton into a multi variety of polynomials. So they use the methods inspired by mathematician and weaver Alda Dietz, a knowledge coming from 49, and they have been able to translate these polynomials to weaving patterns. So these patterns were woven using cotton yarns in collaboration with the artisans of Casa das Tecedeiras. The result pieces look to tie abstract information and its processing to the material world that sustains it. So further with this different knowledge and experience and immersions on the territories and the artisans, we had the chance and to get to know that this opportunity as is an ECOG will of course attract the interest of the population at the European level by generating shared spaces of knowledge about contemporary global emergencies such as ecology or community life. But the sustainability of this strategy is only guaranteed through the presence and the involvement of communities rooted in the territory. Our call is for the interior, and so we intend to reinforce the importance of the communities, underline the legacies through the reinterpretation of knowledge, as well as reactivate ruins in a frank contact with the knowledge of the territory and its holders or their holders. In this environment, and so unique environment, and also social and economic conjuncture, The great legacy of the ECOG title will be the transformation and the sedimentation of the territory through culture, and no distorting the understanding of the mechanism of the territorial fabrics, but working on convergence in a more consensual knowledge, optimizing the future of the citizenship. So, now that I finished this presentation that I tried to be brief of artifacts and so much more we could say and share about this project that is just starting, I pass this stage to Amanda. Let's start with Amanda, and then we go further to Marina, and then we'll have time to really share knowledge. So thank you once again.
Okay, now. Yes, okay. I was saying that I'm going to speak about the Mutual Institute of Environmental Narratives, and I was saying that it's an initiative by Matadero Madrid, by the Center of Contemporary Creation, but it's actually a joint initiative with the City Council, the Madrid City Council, in particular with the Environment and Mobility Area and the Office for Climate Change, and also of the Innovation and Technology for Development Center, which is an interdisciplinary center of the Technical University of Madrid. And it's important for me to state this joint initiative, that this is a joint initiative because this started as a result of a will of these three entities to start different collaboration dynamics between them, between these public institutions. Before that, there was a collaboration between these three entities, but it was perhaps a little bit more transactional, where the City Council asked to the university for some specific reports, and then and so on. So in 2018, these three entities started to develop a series of experiments of applied research with artists and scientists and servants of the public administration and collective of citizens. And to gather these experiments, we created the IMNA, the Mutant Institute. So if you can pass to the next slide, what I first wanted to talk about is, I don't think it's, okay, now. Yes, so I wanted to speak before about the whys of the Institute before explaining what it actually is, because we departed from a situation in which the main narrative, the one that was largely in the media, was or is still the scientific one, no? The data and the narrative of the crisis and collapse of social movements are what have made the headlines. And this is very important, of course, because it has largely contributed to give visibility and name and define the parameters of this global threat of the environmental crisis. But I always like to start these conversations about narratives with a question that poses the environmental scientist Federica Ravera, and in relation to a work by artist Katie Patterson, which is a work from the 2008. And the question is, what is more significant in terms of understanding the melting of the glaciers? Is it the data about the thick of ice or the thickness of the ice, or is the sound of the block of ice falling into the ocean? No. So thinking of narratives and thinking of the importance, of course, of the scientific account and movements such as Fridays for Future, Extinction Rebellion, that have worked as lobbies to prompt different narratives to that of the geopolitical elites or the mass media. No, they have switched the narrative to that of a climate crisis and nearby collapse, to that of deceleration and progressive retreat instead of sustainable development. But what we were thinking is, what we were proposing with IMNA was to question the terms of the ecological transition that we must undertake now. No? And we are proposing to do so through the lenses of art and more effective, let's say, and synesthetic kinds of communication. So our departing question is this, or was and is this, that you see on screen. Could other imaginaries lead to a different future? With this question in mind and at heart, our mission was from the beginning to create and consolidate a space for transdisciplinary experimentation and action to connect art, science, and technology with society, because we thought that we speak a lot about multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity, but it really there's very few spaces that can do this transdisciplinary work in a stable and long-term way. So our mission was that, to create and consolidate this kind of space where we could analyze the mechanisms behind the existing imaginaries, what narratives are helping us deal with this crisis, which ones are just paralyzing, and which ones could be more helpful, perhaps. So the idea was to analyze the imaginaries, co-create and communicate, or also amplify new imaginaries or different imaginaries that present possibilities for the present and future, and to research, create, and implement climate change adaptation projects locally, in Madrid, but that could be prototyped and that would work in other spaces. So we work in the field of environmental humanities, and also with the aim of expanding this framework. So if you can go to the next slide. Given such mission, and a year after the creation of the Institute in 2018, so in 2019, this platform of collaboration that I mentioned, we were selected to develop a program that was, it's a program by the European Institute of Technology, and specifically of a community that it's called, the Knowledge Innovation Communities for Climate, the Climate Kit. And they put forward a program that is called Deep Demonstration, which supports 15 cities, which to act as demonstrations of rapid change. The aim, of course, is the decarbonization of the cities by 2030, but the idea is that these cities could demonstrate a more rapid change by 2030. So what I think that it's most interesting about this context is that the deep demonstration propose a systemic approach, which implies, first of all, the need to count and to put in the center, not just to count, to put in the center what they call the problem owner, which is the city council in this case, the political instances, which are the owners of the problem, and the ones that need to design design the roadmap towards this climate neutrality. So this implies first a political and cultural change, that is needed, not just a scientific and technological one. So in this context, what we do in IMNA is work as let's say, as a cultural arm of the platform. If you go to the next slide, you will see a little bit our areas of experimentation. We have this portfolio of interconnected projects that work at city level. And those are the areas of experimentation, both for the projects that work within the territory and in specific areas of the city, for the naturation, to connect naturation of spaces in the city with our health, to try to co-design new models of mobility. Then we have an area of urban retrofit. And lastly, a sandbox, a regulatory sandbox to be able to do all the rest, no? And then we act. The idea is to act in different levels of change through all these main areas of experimentation. So in the case of IDEIAS, if you go to the next slide, we have. I can't see the next slide. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So we have created what we've called the spaces for research action, no? Where we experiment through interdisciplinary focus groups. I mean, all of the groups in this platform are interdisciplinary, but the particularity of the projects that are led by IMNA is that these groups are led by artists and architects. And so we have created these spaces for citizen science and empathic strategies, such as the project Riologia, where we have approximated the renaturation process of the Manzanares River in Madrid, or spaces for the joint work of children and young activists at the Ministry of the Future, which is a project which aims to think or where they can think, children and young activists, of what could be the portfolio of a ministry of the future that thinks of a long-term pact between species and generations. And this is articulated through summer camps. Then we do also exhibitions, such as we did Ecovisionarios, which was originally presented at the MAT in Lisbon, and many spaces of debate, such as a podcasting studio like the Mutant Radio, where we aim to find a common ground for debate. But here I would like to concentrate in two projects. One is the Cyber Garden, because I would like to speak a little bit more about it, because it's the one that it's applied research. Yes. Okay. So yes, I was going to say that yes, I will speak a little bit about the Cyber Garden very briefly, and about the Urbs, Virus and Bits, which is our latest pedagogic adventure. So if we go to the next slide, the Cyber Garden was actually the first experiment that we did in this platform of collaboration, because what we did is to use Matadero as a case study, because it's considered urban heat island. And if you've been to Matadero, well, Matadero used to be an old slaughterhouse, for those who haven't been there, and it has a huge spaces without green areas or without shadows. So the idea was to find nature-based solutions for the adaptation to climate in that specific space through these interdisciplinary groups that were led by artists, but also to be able to design prototypes that could be replicable in other spaces in the city. But the Cyber Garden, we wanted it to be as well a place where to start talking about mutualism, about interspecies relations, and about the relation between nature and technology as a hybrid and continuous reality. So a space for the creation of new narratives as well, not just as an implementation project. And lastly, I will speak a little bit about Urbs, Virus and Bit, which is a course that we will have in September. So those of you who are interested can join us. It will start on the 13th of September and 11th of October, and it's a course that it's part of our program of independent studies, which is Matadero Critical Studies, that connects interdisciplinary research groups. And it's also one of our proposals for the activities of the new European, to think of the new European Bauhaus. And the idea is that we think of it as a pilot of what it could be a school of the environmental humanities and the cities, and to reimagine the city in its digital, ecological, and social dimensions. And through we will start doing so through radical cartographies and digital storytelling. And it will be a course directed by architect Pablo de Soto, and that will count, among others, with Fei Zhu, who is one of the co-editors of the Feral Atlas, of the publication of the Feral Atlas. So this is one of the last projects that we've done. And I think that with this, I can leave the floor to Marina. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Wonderful presentation. So it's difficult to we can see in Portugal and Spain, where I'm from, and I'm from the north of Spain, very close to Portugal, so I know very well the area. And suddenly I've been living somehow, this is my countryside in the outskirts of Rotterdam, full of greenhouses, automated, many of them, that are producing 24/7. It's kind of my understanding of the landscape and the relation between the natural and the technological has shifted a little bit and probably been influenced by these type of images. Next. What is interesting is that more, traditional forms of relating to the landscape, as the traditional Dutch farm has been more and more like eaten by these other business models of these greenhouses, where tomatoes and flowers, greeneries are cultivated and then exported. Actually, the Netherlands is one of the biggest exporters of food in the world, and which is quite remarkable for such a small country. So you can imagine how it is done. Next. And similarly, we have also the relation between, not only the apparent nature and its more artificial form, but also how animals are connected to these environments that in certain ways they are also enclosed in these large areas, in many of them, as we can see in the next image, not taken care by farmers, but actually by robots. So this is a little bit the dystopian and utopian, for some, place where I've been doing my research about the relation between humans, non-humans, and that has manifested in many projects. Well, this is obviously it has to do with memory, but not only close memories, but also very distant memories, but that are nevertheless present. That is the connection between these forms of production, exploitation of the land and resources and bodies, and the past of the enslaved trade in which the Netherlands was involved. And obviously that has been under discussion for a long time, but perhaps in the last years has been more prominent in the public debate, how to recognize these links between the Netherlands and its past, colonial past, and links to the slavery. This I've been exploring in different projects. One of them, it was in the Dutch Pavilion in the Architecture Biennial in 2018, so the previous one. And for me, it was interesting to present the visitors with these grids. That, to me, in a way, is the representation of the Dutch landscape. This really Cartesian, organized, rational landscape that is man-made primarily, and that also projects a particular idea of equality and order, and is largely infrastructural. But you go to next one. What the pavilion, and next, revealed. Well, also was a larger topic about, locker rooms, but I leave it for another day because it's another train of thought. But these lockers were indeed opening and leading to different other worlds that are also part of this landscape and this society. One more. So you could go further, and some of these grids, abstract grids, were leading to other information, other worlds, but also other rooms. Next. In which different stories were told by the other contributors to the pavilion, like Beatriz Colomina, next, Mark Wigley, Martin Kuipers, Simon Nikhil, Malala, Liam Young, and many others. Next. But so obviously this was a long-term research that we did in automation, not only in the Netherlands, but also in China, in particular in Pearl River Delta. But we also thought that we have to propose something to how to kind of bridge the gap between this highly automated and efficient landscape and the challenges that we have for the future. So next, I'm just gonna very quickly summarize some of the different projects that we have done around that. And this is also for the Milan Triennial. I was curating the pavilion with Francine and Angela. And we were thinking about darkness. In this case, it's how the landscape and the inhabitants of the landscape, but also animals and many living beings are affected by this 24/7 operating industries that are in the countryside and that don't allow to have dark nights. And it seems kind of banal, but the darkness is a very unevenly distributed resource. Next. So we were thinking about how these new cycles of light and darkness were affecting bodies, our sleep, and this is a fantastic project by Lucy McBride, but also other beings. In lithium, this exhibition, we were looking into how our daily habits, like using this phone, are connected to the extraction of lithium, and how our ongoing search of energy was leading to the depletion of ecosystems and all the beings based on that. So what can we do around that? Next. In the Institute, we start to think about what could be the role of an institution in changing the paradigm of how we have the relation, as Andreia said, how nature is not something that is out there, but is something that is a nature culture entanglement. So how we can think about changing our ways of working as well within the Institute and changing the way in which we understand architecture, design in relation to ecology. Next. So we obviously have been looking into, even at the level of the exhibition making, what are the resources that we are using, how we can recycle, what are the processes of extraction that are associated to also our own processes within the institution, but also the artworks and the designs that are part of the spaces and programs we support. Next. So one of these initiatives was like an open call for new institutions. And the idea was like how to think through other paradigms to create institutions. I mean, in that sense, I think we connect with the Instituto Mutante, like this idea of we need another type of organizations for another type of politics connected to ecology and forms of action and organization. So we organized this call, and for the last year, we had two groups thinking across different paradigms. One of them across ecology, working in Brazil with the landscape of Caatinga, and thinking through what new institutions could mean, what could do. Next. And in our own trajectory, we were thinking obviously about the post-human. Next. The a-human that we take from Patricia McCormack, like what will be like if we will get extinct as a species and we leave the place for others. Next. Primarily the more than human. That seems like a compromise in some ways, but this is a book that we have edited together with Lucia Petroiusti and Andres Hake. And it's a reader, a collection of texts from many different years that try to come together, like ideas or imaginaries also what our relation with the world could be under the paradigm of the more than human. And next. Yeah, so practical terms. And now all this, what happens? So we said, okay, what if we start thinking about this multi-species urbanism and we applied it in the institute? So we started thinking about this project that is called ZOOP. It's almost like a cooperative for more than humans. So we are exploring, and in particular my colleague class, how to organize an institution that implies in its founding regulations the legal representation for collective bodies that are not only humans. Next. So now this is being implemented. It's a practical answer to the question how we can make the world habitable for humans and non-humans. So how to give voice, that is always a bit tricky, but we are also exploring it like in legal terms, to all the species that are part of a particular territory and make them part of the decision-making processes. And this involves highly technological aspects, but also very, daily activities. Next. So there have been many attempts now to implement the SOP. So there are different spaces in Europe that are embracing this idea with different partners. And one of them is our own garden as well, like similar to Matadero. We are trying to implement the idea of the SOP in the new institute in Rotterdam. We are on it. So I will report back after years. And just to finalize, Andrea was referring also to the Shanghai Biennial. Obviously, this was a challenge because we were very far. We only were able to go to Shanghai a few times. So the engagement that we wanted to create had to shift. So we were curating by proxy in a way. So there were other people that were representing us, and we had to experience a lot of trust, and it was fun. And it was bodies of water. And here the many artists that also thought about how to relate to the environment in a different way. And you go to the next, for instance, Himali Singh Song, also thinking about other imaginaries that connects to the ecology and other memories. Next one. Next one. And also we have other artists that were participating in the biennial next, as Yesa Tan Jones, also thinking about new narratives from the landscape, obviously also with political positions into the more like feminist ideologies and movements. Next. And also very like artists that had already passed away, but we found inspiration in them also in the way they were using craft, as many as other artists that were also thinking about technology and craft, and is Feliciano Centurion. And we were really inspired by these tapestries he was doing, and have beautiful messages in Spanish that I hope you can, next one, read. That says, soy un árbol, like I'm a tree. And you can read it later. And the other one, next one, I leave you with this, is germinar, that is blooming or blossoming somehow. So I think this is the where we are at the moment at the new institutes. Also with my colleagues in Shanghai, I think many people like Lucia Petrojusti has been working on these questions of with her project General Ecology. So many of the work is also indebted to her. And I can only see from my position at the Design Academy in Eindhoven, how more and more these questions that we have seen in the program, the fantastic program you and Doi and Andrea in Nagarda, that's this relation between technology and crafts, and how more and more designers are interested in the biodesign, in rediscovering the crafts, and not with a nostalgic point of view, which I think is what is interesting, but actually thinking also into the future. And yeah, let's discuss this and other things. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marina and Amanda. Oof, so much to say, two amazing presentations, so rich, so inspiring, so humble as well, so logical and so pertinent. So let's try to talk, and I don't want to be like an interview, so let's share really ideas. So I was really curious during your both presentations, and maybe I will start by Marina, just because it was the last one, and I was even taking some notes here. It's just one question, but you were talking about extinct species, and I was thinking in a utopian situation, but let's imagine if the binary construction of nature and culture has entered in a full huge big crisis. How can art and architecture redefine these relations?
Yeah, I think that's a key question. And I've seen more and more, like for instance, in architecture, I always try to advocate for the displacement or the centering of the human from the equation, because many of these disciplines have been creating around the notion of the human, and in particular around some humans, because when we talk about humans, we don't talk about everyone. I mean, through history, actually, what you were saying, the categories that categorized nature and culture, within nature, different species, and that created too many occasions for forms of exclusion and exploitation. And now we see, okay, how can we reorganize our understanding of bodies and relations? And so for me, it's a question of also, okay, let's displace for a moment, and you probably a bit more, the primacy of the human in this equation, and when we actually think about comfort. And I think that's fundamental, because many times it's not that we don't want to respect the other, but we always put at the forefront the comfort of the human, and in that sense we sacrifice many others. So for me, that's a question. And I don't know then about like how the categories then will blur. I think that's fascinating. We are seeing how that happens, this type of fluidity and non-binary constructions are happening in many parts of our society. And then also the definitions that have been holding these categories are more and more complex. I mean, it's a cliche already, but when we say that human body is primarily constructed by millions of bacteria, then we have to acknowledge, okay, what is our humanity in relation to that fact that actually part of us is not supposedly human. So I think for me, that's the key question. Like, yeah, thinking about nature as nature cultures in terms of Donna Haraway, I think it's helpful, displacing the human and acknowledging that even the categories that we think we are very sure about are not even that, holding that much if we look them deeper.
But there is something that I'm daily questioning myself with can you hear me? Because somehow I'm listening I'm listening an echo. Well, but I will continue. If you listen to me well, I will try to concentrate and continue. I'm constantly asking myself, okay, and I could ask you, what are the roles of biennials or institutions played in this understanding? But sometimes there is also a gap of making ourselves understandable, because sometimes the biennials and those institutions works in a cluster, very pre-selected, and it's not approaching like the common inhabitant, the common people. So how can we really engage, if we are talking about collaborations, if we are talking about working together? So how can we do that? What are we all missing here? What is the gap of the dialogues, and what we can we do to work it better and to do better?
I mean, that's super difficult, right? Because we have to navigate different forms of engagement and discourse. On the one hand, I cannot negate that I have an interest in diversity, and I think part of the work that I do is connected to opening up these questions to students, and then they will, bring them or rethought them. Is that institution that depends in a way largely on the Ministry of Culture, but also Foreign Affairs, and in a way like that allows to bridge the what happens in the field, in the street, the professionals and policy. So most of the times what we try to do is also that these things like ZOP or other initiatives, other forms of institutional practice will end up having also a legal construction. Obviously, I'm not saying that the legal construction then, solves any problem, but at least is that my position within this institution is the possibility to bridge new paradigms, new forms of thinking, together with the professional field, any visitor of, normal citizens that might not be professionals in the fields of architecture, and the government, and try to see how these things come together. Sometimes they don't come fully, rounded in all the aspects. Sometimes they are more successful in some than others. But for instance, with the ZOP, we are working now with farmers in Friesland, with the government. We are trying to but many times they don't understand what we want to say, because we have to adapt the language of these more than human entanglements, and because we have a jargon that many times we have to not try to clarify. It's not a question of simplify. It's just a question, as you said, that clarify to make able to more people to get involved, and that's interesting.
Great answer. And now passing the question to Amanda. Connected with this, what is, if you have a specific methodology that you follow to instigate these relationships in between design, human, non-human animals, if you somehow activate these pre-established relationships, and how you do that, if you do, and if there is some almost a rule for that, or a script to follow for that?
No, I don't think that there's a script to follow or a rule. I was going to say, and related to what Marina was saying, that for us, I think the key is to think of long-termism and reroute our actions in the local scene. And by that I mean, because yes, of course we have to do an effort to be understood, but to think of the public or audiences as a monolith, it's very difficult and an impossible quest, right? So the idea for us is that's why we root all our programming in specific research projects that are long-term projects, and that are associated with specific research communities and groups that are at the same time connected with communities, of the center or the neighboring areas of Matadero, because I think, and responding also to what it was first said, that now the agency of art and architecture is expanding, precisely because of this blurring of these two categories, nature and culture. And it's expanding because obviously art and architecture have always been critical and speculative practices. And the difference with the architecture is that it also has the capacity for implementation. And this is something that a lot of architects, I'm not an architect myself, but a lot of architects defend. But I think that the difference now is the possibility for those practices to give visibility to co-species, or what Niels Ruban or Anna Singh called the co-species landscapes, or places that are shaped and not just, that are not just human-centric, and so for this to be able to connect all these with specific publics, I think that it's very important, this idea of the long-termism, and to act through long-term research projects that are connected to the programming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes are really also connected with these ECOG projects that after the event follow a period of hangover, because sometimes some of them are not sustainably thinking or think. So yeah, they are not enough engaged with the territory and the real territory. So it's like an ephemeral situation that almost use the resources of the territory to follow a political agenda, and then goes back. And that's why we try at Guarda to follow different rules, and the process is the most important for us, and this is why projects and residencies as artifacts are presented. I have another question, and this one is really for both of you, because I really admire your work, so I follow what you are both doing. You are really inspirational for me. So I have a question. What is for you, and this could be connected, of course, I think it will be maybe connected with the main theme of this this panel, but don't care about that, and really just let's almost give myself, I'm asking you to give myself this advice. But what is for you, for each one of you, the curatorial's most important tool? I don't know which one.
It cut a little bit.
I don't know which one.
The question
What is for you the most important? What is for you the most important curatorial's work, the most important tool?
Well, I would say the curatorial. I think the curatorial is the practice of interdisciplinarity. I don't know if that sounds a little bit pretentious, perhaps, but I see it that way. Yes, it communicates art or through art, but it should be the practice of interdisciplinarity. Hello? Oh.
Yes, we can hear you. You can hear you. Marina?
Yeah, I mean, for me,
yes, we can hear.
Really depends on the space where I operate as a curator. I see a lot of difference between when I work in institutions that I have a permanent position, and then I know I see myself also as a Sherpa that takes artists and designers across these institutional spaces and allowed to open new spaces, or in the biennials, that is another politics. But I would say that infiltration allow people to get people inside the institution to change it and challenge it and transgress that, and then do that with hopefully generosity. I'm not saying that I don't have a voice as a curator. Actually, I think in some cases maybe strong voice, that in maybe in architecture is more normal than in art. That in art, many curators prefer to give the stage to the artists. And I prefer to also work with narratives. But I think generosity, bringing people together, because in that sense, I also, when I curate a show or a project, a program that brings many people that might not have worked together or know each other and create these relations. So in a way, create kind of community. And what I really like about curating, and not so much about the academic work, is this idea of the authorship, that I don't feel that I have the authorship over the projects I do. And actually, in relation to other forms of creation or cultural creation, that you reivindicate the topics as yours, or if someone does the same as you might think that is plagiarism. For me, the best is like if if the things we are doing are actually embraced by many, that's important. That's where it becomes successful, because we have the possibility also to, you know, bring new narratives. So as you were saying, imaginaries, and if, you know, if many institutions are doing something about ecology, the more the better, because it's a very relevant issue. So I'm not interested in uniqueness and I'm interested in collective work and yeah, creating of these networks.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you both. I don't know if you want to ask something also, or if you want to add any other information or detail that I was not touching on topic going on. The thing is that we went a little delay here, but we have time because there are no no other panels. So if you want to say anything else, just please do. No.
Yeah, maybe I would like to ask you, like, what I'm very interested in what you are doing, and maybe what are the next steps for the program, and how do you see thinking about what was being said about long term, that I agree is very important. How do you see this continuing?
Well, actually, I can just answer, or mainly answer, for the aspect of architecture and territory program, because it's the one I'm let's say responsible for. But this is still a work team for the big book. That is the document we have to deliver in the really soon, in next few months. Well, the strategy, and I just can answer for this period until that deliver of the document. I'm trying to emerge in the real territory and get to know the immaterial dimensions of the territory. So when I talk in my presentation about the ruins and the real, let's say, visual or visible aspects, of course I want to, and I think we are responsible to take care of that as well. But I'm more interested in the ancestral knowledge, because we are talking about a region that is really like really old in age. The new inhabitants escape as faster as they can from this region, and I think we should consider strategies that somehow look at that aspect, and of course in a political way, but also and mostly in a social and cultural, let's say, dimension. So for me, curatorship is about to create knowledge, and I don't see my function here in a different way. So during the process, I'm trying to create and develop knowledge, and as always, as in architectural affairs, with as much as people as I can, to bring all together in a collaborative dialogue, or dialogues in plural, and different moments, and also to try to, from one aspect, to preserve the memory, but as you said in your presentation as well, in the other aspect, and maybe mainly to project this memory to the future. So in a way to create a balance in between the past and the future, and preserve or create strategies for and during the present. Well, I could also say that it's our aim to, in all the project, and that is Guarda 2027 project, that we are not, of course we want to win. If we are here and if we are running for this, of course we want to win, but we are really aware, each one of us in each, let's say, responsibility, we are really aware about the need, specifically the topic we were talking about, the need to to create a strategy more than have a final objective, final result that is the winning. So the process is the moment to create these engagements, to create the dialogues, to create the real emergence in the real locus where this is happening. So calling contemporary artists and architects and designers and thinkers to think with us and to think with the communities, with the rural communities, will create a win-win situation. From one side, from one aspect, the cultural artists and architects will get to know, in touch with a knowledge, really rich knowledge, and of course it will create an impact in their own contemporary production. And from the other side, of course, those 70s and 80s years old people will also win a lot and earn a lot. And mostly it's a project, and I think the strategy, it will guarantee their its sustainability when we are aware that we should create new memories for everybody. So let's try to see which are the memories that we could create in order to preserve something after the moment, even if the preparation moment or the ECOC moment. And those projects that start like 10 years or 7 years before the project are the ones who can create the guarantee, because they are prepared, and then they have their own lives with their own local organizations, and they will just go further and create more layers of these let's say research. So yeah, this is the way we try to, and Artifact is just a spotlight here, of course, because we are under the project, but there are several projects who are already being prepared for this year and next year, and to exactly start before the date or the event, because it's not just about the moment, it's about the process, it's about the methodology. That's why I was talking about if there is any kind of methodology about these relationships, because there is, I'm always, not just in Artifacts but in other projects, I'm always really worried about for who are we talking about, who is the audience, but who we want to be the audience, and how can we catch them? How can we really, have created dialogues, honest dialogues with the ones that are really in need? And those territorial projects sometimes are really, I feel that we really have to be really sensitive about everything, because you are the one who arrives there and say, let's do like that, let's think about these topics, and they are like, but why? What is the matter of that? I'm just worried about my chestnut, that I don't have the materiality to do my basket. So where is the connection? And this is the beauty of projects like this, that we can engage the topics and we can explain them, that we are exactly thinking about the same issues. So this is, I don't know if I answer.
What is super important, I think, is that this notion, what you were pointing to, that in order also to bring these new forms of thinking, this new knowledge, we also need other forms of working. So that the more, like, I will say, many times exploitative ways in which cultural institutions work with deadlines and fast production, and I think has to change. And this idea of waiting, long-term processes, forms of engagement that have a lot to do with care. And there is like care versus bureaucracy. We have to develop new forms of working, new forms of being a curator or being a cultural practitioner or an architect that perhaps are not that connected to the base and the methodologies of the market in which we have been working. So I think these two things are inseparable, and that we will be successful in changing and introducing and expanding the topics that we are dealing with at the moment, when we will also be able to work differently, as you are pointing to. So, yeah.
Okay. So, Amanda, you want to add something?
Yes,
you want to add something?
No, I was going to say that I totally agree with Marina. We have to push or create the conditions of possibility where this kind of work can happen, because this is not always easy. No, it sometimes goes against regulations or against the material conditions even of the project. So yes, I think that's the challenge.
Okay, thank you. Let's continue inspiring. At least you are inspiring myself. So please continue to do so well what you do. Inspire everybody, but not just inspiring the other curators and other women, but also inspire the citizens and the public that will get in touch with the result that you are planning, and of course they will be better citizens after those experiences. So thank you to create so much knowledge, and thank you to be so humble and to share all that with myself and with the audience. I don't know, we don't have any idea if there are 2 people watching us or 100, but doesn't matter, because this moment here was really rich for me, at least. And thank you for everything, and please, let's be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Andrea.
Bye.